The Mangler is a 1995 horror film based off the Stephen King short story of the same name. This film marks Tobe Hooper's return to directing a Stephen King adaptation, 15 years after the success of Salem's Lot. The film follows a detective played by Ted Levine, who's trying to solve the mystery behind a possessed laundry folding machine. Robert Englund plays the sleazy owner of the factory. The film opened to poor reception and currently holds an 8 on Metacritic. Hey guys, and welcome back to Garage Stephen-King-a-thon, where every day, for the month of October, we revisit a Stephen King adaptation. Today, we're talking about The Mangler. Guys, I made it known in the Salem's Lot review that I really like Tobe Hooper as a director. Poltergeist, Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2. What? Who likes that movie? I like that movie. Fuck off. Okay, I'm a little tired. Sorry, folks. Yeah, so let's just jump into this movie. So this movie is Tobe Hooper's return to Stephen King movies, and this one was absolutely pummeled by critics. Critics hated this movie. I mean, hated it, and we're gonna get into that. But just for now, let's just talk about this movie. So as I said, this movie follows a detective. There's this factory that has a possessed laundry folding machine, which I just read the premise of this movie. I've never seen this movie, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. This is the first time I watched this movie, and just by reading the premise, I was like, okay. I already watched Maximum Overdrive, where it was possessed trucks, and I watched Christine, and it was a possessed car. And it's just, I'm starting to get a little fed up of the whole possessed inanimate object shtick that Stephen King does. However, does this fall in the same category? I actually felt like this movie had an identity of its own, and I actually enjoyed this movie. Now, is it the best thing since sliced bread? No. Is it terrible like critics say? Absolutely not. I feel like there's no reason to hate on this movie to the extent that critics did. I can understand if you're just like, that wasn't my thing, but people went after this movie. They hated it. And I think this movie is pretty good. It's not gonna, it's like on the same level as a Firestarter to me, you know? I'm probably never gonna watch it again. If I do, it's fine, like I'll enjoy it, but it's not like I'm clamoring to rewatch it. To me, it's just a pretty good movie. This movie, what it does really well is the aesthetic. The aesthetic feels very unique for a Stephen King movie. It doesn't feel like a cold autumn day in Maine. Instead, it feels like almost this dystopian gothic society. It really borrows a lot from Tim Burton. And that's kind of a thing that was going on in the 90s. You know, coming out of the 90s and into the 2000s, everybody wanted to be Tarantino. Tarantino was the hip director. But before that, everybody wanted to be Tim Burton. You had the Tim Burton movies that were doing well, and then you had random movies like Monkey Bone, where it was just weird and creepy, but it was like, it's like Tim Burton, it's like Tim Burton. And this is kind of doing the same thing, but I feel like it kind of works in this movie. It works in this movie because the movie is ultimately a criticism of capitalism, and that criticism of capitalism is told in a very fairy tale-like fashion. I kind of felt like I was watching a Guillermo del Toro movie, where you watch a movie like Pan's Labyrinth or The Shape of Water, and it really does feel like you're watching a fairy tale. And when you watch a fairy tale, the characters tend to be a little over the top. I think of Michael Shannon's character in Shape of Water, how he's just like an over-the-top bad guy with a moldy hand. It's the same thing in this movie. Robert Englund, who's famous for playing Freddy Krueger, is the bad guy in this movie, and just like Freddy Krueger, he's covered with makeup, but he gives a really good performance in this. Very over-the-top bad guy.
God damn, sons of bitches!
These two idiots almost killed Sherry!
Damn it!
Jeez, I'm sorry. You okay?
Moron, you could have killed her!
It's nothing, I'm okay.
Sherry.
But it really does feel like, it felt like I was watching a Depression-era movie. I felt like I was watching almost a Charlie Chaplin movie. Like when you watch a movie like Modern Times, and Charlie Chaplin is working in the factory during World War II or Great Depression around that time. The factories felt very big. There's gears everywhere, smoke flying everywhere. The conditions feel really rough because that's how it was. And this movie is a criticism of capitalism. It kind of reminded me of that aesthetic. So I feel like when critics criticize this movie for being simplistic in its telling, I feel like that's done intentionally, just like how Guillermo del Toro does it. As far as the simplicity of the characters, the character that I thought was really cool in this movie was the hero. Now, I kind of have a soft spot for reluctant heroes. I love a good reluctant hero. I like it when someone is forced on a mission and it's not really out of the kindness of their heart, but it's more like they're forced into that situation. The main character in this movie, played by Ted Levine, he's a very sleazy guy. He goes around, he talks like this, he slurs his words a bit.
Hell, they used to burn witches just 10 miles from here. It's this puritanical ethic is still hanging over.
Look, don't start with the sprout breath political mystical bullshit, Mark. I'm not in the mood this evening, thank you. The woman's dead, and that machine is running right now.
He goes around and he has his container full of antacids and he's just popping a bunch of antacids. He's wearing a trench coat just like in the noir movies. And I really liked him as the hero on this journey. And his brother-in-law is in it for the ride as well. And his brother-in-law in the movie, he plays someone who's more knowledgeable in the whole mythology of possessions and demons and stuff like that. Meanwhile, the protagonist is like, what a bunch of horse shit, and doesn't care. But yeah, that creates some really good comedy in my opinion. So you have that kind of buddy cop vibe going on in the middle of this Tim Burton-esque world that's a criticism of capitalism. And yeah, it feels like a fucking weird mix of too many ideas, but I mean, I'd rather too many ideas being thrown at me than not enough ideas. That's just me personally. Some of my favorite back and forth scenes that I'm talking about, at the end when there's an exorcism that's being done on this laundry folding machine. The brother-in-law is quoting the Bible, saying passages from the Bible. Meanwhile, the main character is just freaking throwing holy water and a cross and just throwing everything in the kitchen sink at that machine like, get it out, get out, get out!
As it's vomiting up, nations be holy! Amen, goddammit!
At a point, he even says, amen, god damn it! So I like the performances, I like the style. When this movie does camp, it does camp very well, and it's a Tobe Hooper movie, so you expect there to be some camp. But yeah, that first death scene actually really got me on the edge of my seat. They really build up a lot of tension there. The old lady drops her pills in the machine, and she wants to grab them, and she ends up getting crushed by the machine and folded, and it's done in a very gruesome and traumatic way. And that whole ending, is it campy? Of course it's campy. They're doing an exorcism on the machine. The machine eats up Robert Englund in a very gruesome fashion as well. And then after that, we think the machine is dead, but it comes back to life. And now the machine is crawling throughout the factory and doing whatever. And the CG is terrible, but it's not as terrible as Lawnmower Man. I just finished watching Lawnmower Man, so my expectation, I set the bar a little low with that. So after they defeat the machine, I actually kind of like the message at the end. The message being that the problem with capitalism is that many people suffer while a few people get the merits of capitalism. However, those who get the merits of capitalism won't speak out against it. And it's kind of this weird cyclical thing. That's kind of the message of the movie. Overall, the movie doesn't have the deepest message, but I overall enjoyed it. You know, the movie kept me invested enough that I was entertained consistently throughout the movie. I'm reading one of the reviews here. This one is from the Washington Post when this movie came out. This is the review by the Washington Post. I'll throw it up on the screen. Adapted by Hooper, Stephen Brooks, and Peter Welbeck, which isn't the real name of the person. He used a pseudonym because he didn't want to be associated with this movie. The Mangler is ludicrous from start to finish. Its plot lines dangle. Its effects fail to dazzle. And the acting and directing are uniformly bad. The movie looks like it's gone through its namesake. The 5-ton, 40-foot-long Hadley Watson Model 6 steam ironer and folder. Oh, get this. Oh, no. Even the least demanding of genre fans will be hard-pressed to tremble in its presence. God, there's something about journalism puns. Why is it journalists can get away with puns, but whenever I do a pun, I just get the shit kicked out of me. But anyway, yeah, that's what they thought. Basically, I was reading every review. All the reviews failed to explain why this movie was bad. And the one thing I found in common with all of these reviews was the lack of sympathetic characters, which I do agree that the characters are maybe less sympathetic, but, you know, the main character is not like a huge scumbag or anything. He's a pretty decent guy, you know. He's like again, it's like I said, he's a reluctant hero. He's your typical detective who's about to retire and wants to go on retirement and go on a cruise, but I have to do this last job. It's not like this character lacked complete sympathy. As far as the villain goes, yeah, that guy was not sympathetic at all. He is a woman abuser with weird skin, and he's basically Freddy Krueger. So yeah, he's not sympathetic, but he's not made to be sympathetic. So yeah, I disagree with critics on this. I feel like they're too hard on it. I feel like this is a decent enough movie. If you're a Tobe Hooper fan, that's why I never saw this movie. I'm a Tobe Hooper fan. I saw this movie. Tobe Hooper's heyday was in the 70s and 80s, and I saw this movie, it was 95, and I'm like, okay, this is probably Tobe Hooper losing his steam, and no pun intended, Tobe Hooper losing his... You see, I do puns. Don't get me started. But yeah, it's probably just Tobe Hooper losing his steam at the end of the career. I don't need to watch this movie. Turns out it was decent enough. So give it a shot. If it's interesting to you, go ahead. You will at least be entertained. And guys, tune in tomorrow. More Stephen King movie reviews coming your way.